1984 which I was about 13 years old. I was in Delhi, New Delhi. June 1984, I was, the first news of the attack on the Bar Sahib came along while I was at home with my family. Most time the television, the khabra, news, any strong, the only source that we had was the government controlled television, and so obviously news was filtered at that point. The first thing that we figured out was from our family and friends in Punjab. We got some calls from Punjab, and that's how we figured out. And the next morning we read the newspaper, and everything else was after that. Honestly, I cannot really recall what exactly happened, but one of the things that I do distinctly recall was that I felt kind of horrible that a Gurdwara had been gunned down. We didn't know, mind you, we didn't know how bad it was. We knew there was an army in the Gurdwara. We didn't know much of the details on the day off, or even after the next day. We did not know any of that. So the first reaction was the army getting into Gurdwara was, this is bad. But it was only after we saw the videos, when we started back in the days, the news, English news was at 8:40 at night, and 8:40 news came along, and I saw on the third or the fourth day they started showing some parts of it, and that's when we saw what was going on there, and that's when I thought this was horrible. And then after a month or so later, the magazine India Today published a bunch of articles. They did a special on that, which carried some pictures. That made me feel really horrible, but we did not know much at that point what exactly was going on. Well, for most part at that point, we have to kind of understand this fact that as we were young, and my parents did not want us to know what really was going on. They wanted us to kind of be sheltered away from this information. They would talk, but they did not want us to know, because as I was in grade June I was in grade 7, and then later in July or August when I moved to grade 8, I was in a very impressionable age, and my parents wanted me to kind of stay away from this information. Mind you, we were reading it through the newspapers and everything, but they didn't want to express their true feeling, which now, as we discuss, as we grow older, and they said they were like appalled, that they were in fact afraid that not only they shared the stories of partition of 1947, there was going to be another story of partition in 1984 that they would end up sharing with their kids. November 1984, I was again, it was winter time. I was at home when we I still remember, I just come back from school when we heard the news that Indira Gandhi had been gunned down by Sarabjeet Singh and Beyonce, and I remember most newspapers had published a special edition that day, the evening edition for a daily newspaper, which was not a norm. I very, very clearly recall a special edition being printed, which was half the size of the normal newspaper in terms of the size of length and width, and it was published in the news where it was all about what happened, how it happened, and it was being sold on the streets for a rupee or whatever price. And that's how we picked up the information. Radio was the next thing that we got the rest of the information. Not fearful, to tell you the truth, I was not fearful because I probably did not know any better what was coming. In fact, there was a sense of pride that came along. You know what someone has gone and done something and taken care of, which should have been. And this was the first feeling that came to my mind. And as we've read in history many a times, the Bar Sahib was taken over by so and so, and he was it was brought back to the glory. And this was the first feeling, and this is how people around the community felt. And this is what I had in mind. This was the first feeling. The neighborhood that I lived in at that point, we lived in a duplex kind of a house with landlords lived on the main level, and we lived on the upper floor as tenants, and everyone else. It was the neighborhood that I lived in was a predominantly Hindu neighborhood, but there were quite a few Sikhs in the vicinity, and the communication wasn't that great, and we weren't able to call people and figure out what was going on. Even though we did have a phone, but we weren't able to call everyone else because they didn't have a phone. So the immediate reaction was from whoever was just around us, and most people would say, "Well, this wasn't a great thing that happened, and no, this was a bad thing." But within my inner self, I felt, you know what, this is something okay. Whether it was or it wasn't, that's a totally different thing. But at that point, this is what I felt, you know what, this had to be done, and it was. Not anyone in my immediate family that I know of that became a target, but I remember the next morning, I heard that this had started, the whole carnage had begun. And I still did not occur to me that this was coming here, it was close to home. I have a memory of, there was noise on the street away from us, a couple of streets down, and I was trying to run down to go see what had happened, without knowing what was going on. I remember the landlady, where we lived, as I mentioned, we lived in a duplex house. She stopped me and said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I want to go see what's going on there." She said, "You run away from it, don't go out, don't step out." And I went back to our apartment, and I did not know the level of violence at that point. It was the next morning when we went up on the flat roofs of the houses that they have. We saw fire and smoke all around our house. At one point, we were able to see 15 or maybe even 20 houses all around us that were on fire. The next thing that happened was the fear, because now that we were trying to figure out what was going on, so there was no way we could step out without being killed. So this is the point where we realized a lot of things were happening. This was a predominantly Punjabi neighborhood with 15 to 20% Sikhs in the neighborhood. There were street guards that were coming along, so the people had formed a committee to protect the street, but it was more to protect their property than to protect people around them. And the next thing that I noticed, there was lost connection between the community. For next to 1 week or a week or so, we were holed in our own house. We were not able to step out. So whatever rations and groceries we had at that point, and mind you, in India, milk comes in every day. So the second and the third day, there was no milk for tea or for milk or anything. So if you ran out or whatever, that's how you had to live. Our neighbors said, come to us, or landlords, or no one else came to us and said, "Hey, do you guys need anything? Do you need any help?" In fact, if anything, the landlords said, my dad's scooter was parked in the front yard. They said, could you make sure that you hide the scooter in the back end so that people don't come and put the scooter on fire, and as a result thereof everything else goes on fire. So that's what I remember. And I do not have a first-hand experience, or I haven't seen what was going on. All I can recall is hearing people talk what was going on, and people said, "Bahar se log aaye hain, bahar se log aaye," and I did not understand what was this bahar se log. We did continue to live there for almost a year and a half, a year or so after that, at the same house, and there was a sense of fear. At one point, there was almost kind of a decision that, you know what, let's move away from here, move to Punjab from Delhi. And a lot of other people that I knew of were trying to do the same. In fact, my father's side of the family, quite a few of them moved to Punjab. After that, with my father and my whole family, we chose to live at the same house, and after that, we moved to another house.
Okay, within Delhi.
Yes. Well, no one asked me. The truth is, no one ever asked me what happened, so there was no reason for me to tell.
And even with family members or with friends, have you had conversations or shared stories about that time?
Yes, with the family and the friends, there's stories have been shared as to what happened, what were our feelings, and what happened after. Like I said, I mentioned my father's side of the family, his cousins moved to Punjab, and they had to tell the truth, even have a worse life than what they were living elsewhere in UP. To uproot your whole family and the business and the schooling and the education and go to another city and not being able to speak the language, which they did not. They lived in UP. They did not speak any Punjabi at that point. So the kids were off track. They didn't finish their schooling. Their business was ruined. So they actually pretty much ruined everything they had. So it was not just the immediate effect of what was going on in the city. It was the after effects of move that killed them rather than the actual carnage.
Experience as a child?
No, I don't. And it's a personal attitude. I guess I just don't, because I did live each day of my life as this in the last year. So it's a great day to never resolves any issues. And what was happening prior to June 1984 in Punjab was probably not the best solution to the problem. A political battle is a political battle. When it comes to a violent battle, many wrongs are done, and there were wrongs done at that point, and which is what resulted in the whole. I mean, to pinpoint that June '84 were invading Harmandir Sahib was wrong is one aspect of it, but that's only one side of the picture. The other side of the picture is that what was happening before that was probably not as appropriate at that point. So it could have been avoided had the battle remained political battle, but when bloodshed starts, no one wins.